So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Janine Felsen. Janine is a Deputy Chairperson of the Association of Small Island States. She is Ambassador of Belize and Strategic Advisor to the Alliance of Small Islands. She has been leading and she is a leading voice for small island developing states in key negotiations, including the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Janine Felsen to share her thoughts and her perspectives on this topic.
Thank you very much, Tassine. And let me, of course, thank the organizers for inviting me to share my perspective on my lived experience of climate change. As you pointed out, I work directly with small island developing states. Belize has been the chair of the Alliance of Small Island States for 2019 to 2020. And so I've been directly working with 44 of the small island developing states from the Pacific, the Caribbean, and we have another region referred to as the Atlantic, Indian, and Mediterranean regions. So I want to speak from my personal experience, from what climate injustice or climate justice looks like from my own eyes. I grew up in Belize, which is a small country in Central America that at its lowest point sits eye to eye with the Caribbean Sea. Living in this tropical country, my memories are of swimming in the salty sea, climbing fruit trees for the ultimate treat, and basking in the warmth of the sun. Time had always seemed synchronized with nature, and in fact, the Belizean way of living follows the rhythms of our many seasons. We have a conch season, a lobster season, a shrimp season, a mango season, a plum season, and these of course all fall within the two main seasons of dry and rainy. And of course, there's the hurricane season. Hurricanes in Belizean history have marked crucial inflection points for our social and economic development and our national consciousness. I think you can call upon any Belizean, probably around my age, who can recount family stories of the 1961 Hurricane Hattie, which was a Category 5 hurricane that struck Belize. In fact, it was so devastating that they retired the name Hattie entirely. It was traumatic, defining. More than 400 people died. Belize City was completely destroyed, as well as many of the coastal cities. And that hurricane alone spurred a major migration event for Belizeans, many who departed to North America. But it was also an event that required us to rethink where we had our capital. Of course, at that time, we were still under the yoke of the British Empire, but we decided nonetheless to move the capital, Belize, from Belize City inland to Belmopan. So our way of living has been about coping, adapting, and building resilience. But our seasonal rhythm with nature seems to have changed. And I think it's especially evident in the physical surrounding that I'm very familiar with. So Belize has many offshore atolls and hundreds of small sandy keys, mangrove forests, coastal lagoons, and estuaries that form part of the main major barrier reef system, which is the largest in the Western Hemisphere. Slowly, some of those sandy keys are shrinking and they may altogether disappear. With the warming waters and the change in composition of the water, life underwater is similarly under pressure. With some of these events, while some of these events would have inevitably occurred over time, their scale and pace have accelerated, which is unequivocally attributable to climate change. These changes are being seen across the Caribbean. So it's not solely in Belize, and of course, across other small island developing states regions. According to the Climate Change Center, which is located in Belize, The Caribbean is experiencing sea level rise at a rate matching the global mean of 5 millimeters per year. And many countries are experiencing beach erosion, flooding, saline intrusion into coastal aquifers, salinization of agricultural lands. With the higher ocean temperatures, then we're beginning to see longer periods of coral bleaching. Ocean acidification is reducing the growth potential of corals and the carapace of shellfish. Mangroves and seagrass meadows are also being degraded. With a decline of the coastal system, marine life is migrating to cooler, more hospitable environments, resulting in a decline in fishing for pleasure, sustenance, and export. To bring this into perspective, for Belize, 5 millimeters per year of sea level rise will mean that in 10 years, large swaths of our coasts will be uninhabitable. The former executive director of the Climate Change Center, Dr. Kenrick Leslie, pointed out just after Paris that every millimeter translates into a meter of land being submerged. So Belize City, the place I call home, will be submerged well before the end of the century. And that is literally in the lifetime of my own children. But this is not a distant prospect. For some of my countrymen, in fact, along the southern coast of Belize, fishing communities are already being impacted. In the small fishing village of Monkey River, with a population of some 196 people, makeshift seawalls of tires are being used to prepare their defenses against encroaching seas. Coastal retreat and adaptive responses, again, have been a given. And while we can speak to the abundance of salty water coming up our doorstep, we can also speak to the scarcity of rainfall that Belize has been experiencing in recent times. So these extremes are fast becoming a norm. Last year, the country was under a partial state of emergency after an unprecedented drought gripped the nation. We had not seen anything like that since we had independence in 1981. According to the industry estimates, for that period, sugarcane production plummeted by some 30%. This is significant considering that agriculture contributes up to 11% to our GDP. So the far-reaching impact of the drought manifested in low growth at around 0.3% in 2019. And then of course, we saw a rise in unemployment from 7.6% to 10.4% between April and September. It's a significant jump. This year, in the middle of COVID-19, Belize was struck by Hurricane Nana. And right now, as I speak, we are battling floods that have overwhelmed whole communities. As much as 60,000 people have been displaced. And as the flood waters push further into Belize district, that number will sadly increase. And just in terms of perspective, we're in 350 to 400,000 people. 60,000 is significant. The volatility that comes with accelerated climate change is not only changing the way we live, it is affecting what we can do to survive. It is about our self-determination. The industries that we depend on are highly exposed to climate risk. These are agriculture and tourism. Hurricanes and droughts can shutter these industries in the same way that COVID has. But unlike COVID, of course, there's no vaccine to prevent hurricanes and droughts and all that comes with accelerated climate change. And we know from the IPCC report on 1.5 that even stabilizing temperature at 1.5, the disadvantaged and vulnerable populations will be disproportionately impacted. Some of the worst impacts on sustainable development are expected to be felt among agricultural and coastal dependent livelihoods, indigenous people, children and the elderly, poor laborers, poor urban dwellers in African cities, and people and ecosystems in the Arctic and small island developing states. That's directly from the IPCC report. The WMO predicts that in any one of the next 5 years, global average temperature could rise to 1.5 degrees. This is right within our reach, within our sights. If that were to happen, and in view of the projected impacts I just referred to, countries like Belize could be experiencing a COVID-19 type event on an annual basis. These tragedies are disproportionate relative to the level of the greenhouse gas emissions that Belize emits. According to our recent report to the UNFCCC, Belize continues to be a net carbon sink So we effectively are not contributing or contribute very little. We're not only the earliest and hardest hit by climate change, we are the least contributor and with the least capacity to pay for these growing and cumulative impacts. This double asymmetry is a grave injustice that has been visited upon the most vulnerable. While we may be the earliest to confront these impacts, the proverbial canary in the coal mine, we are not the last. As the IPCC forewarns, failure to limit global temperature to 1.5 degrees will result in dangerous climate change. In the face of these challenges, the small island developing states have been unbowed. We have elevated our plight as an international plight for the common good. We have also taken on leadership roles in protecting our unique biodiversity, setting high standards for ocean stewardship, and raising the bar of climate ambition with collective efforts to reach net zero by 2050. Our push for climate justice commenced in 1989 in Mali, in Maldives, when the founders of the Alliance of Small Island States set out a bold plan of a campaign to save our islands, protect our ocean, and preserve our planet for future generations. The Alliance launched a campaign for the Climate Change Convention, yes, the very same United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. When that was achieved, they pushed further. They pushed for the Kyoto Protocol with mandatory reductions in emissions from Annex 1 countries. And as we saw the science worsening and against us, SIDS launched a goal-setting campaign for a new global temperature goal. AOSIS the Alliance of Small Island States, began the process for consideration of 1.5 to stay alive. That took us from a technical review right through to the Paris Agreement. Alongside our efforts to secure 1.5 degree as a goal of the Paris Agreement, the Alliance then advocated for it to be considered further in a special report of the IPCC. We were instrumental in getting the special report on 1.5. All along, we have argued that the SIDS benchmark for ambition is a benchmark for securing the world's climate future. We have been vindicated with the 3 most recent IPCC report, and indeed, if the Paris Agreement goals are kept, then all the world will benefit. But even at 1.5 degrees, let me remind you what I said earlier, the impact for SIDS can be cataclysmic. It does beg the question whether, from a SIDS perspective, climate justice is possible. Will there come a point in time when restitution will have to be considered? I certainly hope that future is the worst case scenario. The science offers that it is within the world's major powers' capacity to bend the curve on global emissions. The COVID-19 recovery is an important opportunity to simultaneously transform our global response to climate change and reset to a more sustainable way of living. Perhaps the injustice is in giving up before even trying, saying we can't when we can. For as long as small islands have existed, we have been coping, adapting, and building our resilience. I dare not ask anyone to give up on your dreams so that I can live a bit more comfortably. And likewise, my children should not be asked to dream a bit smaller for the sake of someone else's convenience. I grew up in Belize, as I said in the beginning. It is my home, and I would like to keep it that way. I thank you very much.